She walks alone, but she is not lonely. She moves in silence, but her presence is louder than a crowd. A woman with no friends, or a woman who refuses to be surrounded by the wrong people. Have you ever been called too much? Too independent, too different, too strong? People mistake solitude for loneliness. But let me tell you something. The most powerful people in this world often walk alone. There's a woman sitting alone in a cafe sipping a coffee while the world around her buzzes with laughter, conversations, and clinking glasses. People look at her and wonder, why is she sitting alone? But she doesn't look lonely. She doesn't look lost. She looks at peace. That's because she understands something most people don't. Having people around doesn't mean having the right people around. She could be surrounded by a room full of people and still feel empty, or she could be sitting in solitude and feel completely whole. That is the difference between those who chase company for the sake of it and those who choose relationships with intention. She has learned that in life, a diamond alone shines brighter than a pile of dull stones. Most people believe that the more friends they have, the happier they will be. They measure their worth by the number of birthday wishes, the likes on their pictures, the invitations they receive. But this woman, she doesn't care for the numbers. She doesn't count friends. She counts loyalty. She doesn't seek attention. She seeks depth. Because she knows one real friend who stands by you in the dark is worth more than 100 who only show up when the lights are shining bright. Think about it. How many times have you been in a group and still felt unseen? How many times have you laughed at jokes that weren't funny just to fit in? How many times have you listened to conversations that drained your energy just because you didn't want to be alone? That is the weight of empty relationships. It's like carrying a bag of stones, thinking it's full of gold. Look at the people who always need a crowd. They can never sit alone at a restaurant. They panic if no one texts them back. They say yes to every invitation, not because they want to go, but because they don't want to feel left out. But feeling left out of meaningless things is not a loss. It's a blessing. Because when you remove what is useless, you make space for what is valuable. She has seen what happens when people keep relationships just for the sake of it. She has watched women call someone a best friend one day and an enemy the next. She has seen people smile in pictures with those they secretly despise. She has heard the way friends talk behind each other's backs the moment someone leaves the room. And she decided she would never be part of that. There is a woman who had a huge circle of friends, always at every party, always included in every plan. She thought she had it all, until life tested her. She lost her job, and suddenly the people who once called her sister didn't return her calls. She got sick, and the ones who promised to be there for her were too busy. She hit rock bottom, and her friends were nowhere to be found. That's when she realized the friendships she thought she had were just noise, just background music in a life that needed real support. And so, she changed. She stopped saying yes to everyone. She stopped surrounding herself with people who only loved her when it was convenient. She learned that true friendships are not proven in celebrations but in storms. And once she embraced that, she became untouchable. When she walks into a room now, she doesn't look for familiar faces. She doesn't scan the crowd, desperate for someone to sit with. She takes her seat confidently because she has mastered something rare. Being alone without being lonely. She has become the kind of woman who doesn't fear silence, who doesn't chase attention, who doesn't need 100 hands to hold on to when she can stand strong on her own. People ask, don't you feel like you're missing out? She laughs. Conversations that go nowhere? Drama that drains my energy? No, darling. I'm not missing out. I am saving myself. She watches the world chase validation. She sees people surrounding themselves with others just to avoid being alone with their thoughts. But she knows that a life filled with shallow connections is more suffocating than a life lived in solitude. She doesn't need to be surrounded, she needs to be valued. There's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But she has rewritten this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with the right people. And if she doesn't find the right people, she would rather go alone. Because she knows that a wrong crowd can slow you down, drain your energy, and lead you off your path. She chooses quality over quantity because she understands that not every friend is a real friend. Some people clap for you only when they benefit from your success. Some people stand by your side only when it's convenient. Some people love you only when you fit their idea of who you should be. And she refuses to be a puppet in anyone's play. She doesn't rush to fill her life with company because she knows that not everyone deserves a seat at her table. Her time is sacred. Her energy is precious. And she will not waste it on those who do not uplift her, support her, or add meaning to her journey. There is strength in standing alone. There is power in choosing yourself over empty friendships. There is magic in walking your own path without needing a crowd to validate you. She is not lonely. She is selective. She is not missing out, she is leveling up. She is not alone. She is in the best company of all. Her own. There's a moment when she stops responding, stops explaining, stops justifying. And that moment, that's when you should pay attention. Because when she goes silent, she isn't weak. She is powerful beyond measure. Silence is a language only a few can understand. It's the space where wisdom lives, where strength is built, where battles are won without a single word. The world expects noise. It expects shouting, proving, reacting. But she knows the art of silence. And in that silence, she holds a power that shakes the ground beneath those who once underestimated her. Have you ever seen a storm before it breaks? The air grows still, the sky darkens, the winds pause. And in that pause, there is something chilling. Something more terrifying than the storm itself, the quiet before it strikes. That is her silence. It is not emptiness. It is not weakness. It is the warning of a woman who has stepped back, not because she is defeated, but because she has decided that her energy is too valuable to be wasted on battles that don't deserve her. Look around you. The loudest people are often the weakest. The ones who scream the most, the ones who throw words like weapons, the ones who demand to be heard. These are the ones most afraid. But those who stand in silence, who do not react, who do not give their energy to useless conflicts, those are the ones truly in control. She is one of them. There is a woman who used to argue back, used to explain herself to people who had already made up their minds about her. She used to waste her breath defending her choices to those who never supported her in the first place. She used to plead, reason, fight, until one day she didn't. One day she realized that her peace was worth more than their opinions. That's when everything changed. That's when she became untouchable. She started choosing silence over arguments, peace over drama, wisdom over ego. She started walking away instead of proving herself, and suddenly the people who once controlled her emotions lost their power. Because nothing shakes a person more than realizing they can no longer get a reaction out of you. Think of a queen. Does she scream to prove she is royal? No. She walks and the world watches. She speaks and the world listens. She doesn't waste her time shouting in every battle. Because she knows that some wars are won just by refusing to fight. That is the power of silence. A woman once sat in a room full of people talking over each other, competing to be heard, fighting for attention. She simply smiled, listening, watching. And in that moment, without speaking a word, she held the most power in the room. Because those who talk too much often have the least to say. And those who truly know their worth never beg to be understood. There was a time when she believed that silence meant weakness. That if she didn't defend herself, people would walk all over her. But life taught her differently. She saw that when she stopped reacting, people started questioning themselves. When she didn't fight back, they had no war to win. When she stopped explaining, they had nothing to argue against. And in that silence, she reclaimed her power. Think of the most dangerous predators in the wild. Do they roar and make noise before they strike? No. They watch, they wait, they move in silence. And that is what makes them feared. She has become that woman. The woman who doesn't need to announce her next move. Who doesn't need to prove her strength with words. She lets her actions speak. And when she finally moves, the world takes notice. There's a reason why people fear silence. It forces them to listen to themselves, to the truth, to the things they try to ignore. And that is why she chooses it. Because while others are distracted by noise, she is mastering the power of stillness. There was a time when she thought winning meant having the last word. Now, she knows that real victory is knowing when to say nothing at all. She has learned that not everything deserves a response. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every battle is worth her energy. And when she stops speaking, when she stops engaging, that is when she becomes unstoppable. The people who once tried to break her, they don't know what to do with her silence. They expect her to argue, to prove, to fight, but she just smiles and walks away. And in that moment, she wins every time. Because the most powerful statement she can ever make is refusing to let anyone's words define her. The greatest strength she will ever have is knowing when to remain silent. And the most dangerous thing about her? She doesn't need to be heard to be remembered. There was a time when she felt lonely, waiting for calls that never came, expecting loyalty from people who only stayed when it was convenient. She gave her time, her love, her energy to people who never truly valued her. And then one day she decided, no more. No more chasing, no more waiting, no more expecting. She took all that energy, all that love, and turned it inward. She became her own best friend. She no longer waits for someone to understand her. She understands herself. She no longer begs for company. She enjoys her own presence. She no longer fears being alone. She thrives in it. Because the moment she realized that she is enough, that her own company is more fulfilling than being surrounded by the wrong people, she became unstoppable. There was a time when she thought happiness came from others, from a friend who always listened, from a partner who stayed, from people who made her feel seen. But life has a way of teaching lessons in the most painful ways. She learned that people leave, that promises break, that no one will ever understand her the way she understands herself. And instead of letting that realization break her, she let it build her. Look at her now. She takes herself out for coffee, not waiting for someone to ask. She dresses up for herself, not for compliments. She goes on solo trips, eats at restaurants alone, laughs at her own jokes, dances in her room like no one's watching, because she no longer needs an audience to feel alive. Think about it. How many people do you know who can truly sit with themselves without distraction, without needing validation? The world teaches us to fill every silence, to always be in a crowd, to fear being alone. But she has mastered the art of solitude. And in that solitude, she has found her greatest power. There was a time when she would overthink every word left on read, every unanswered call, every plan that got cancelled. She would wonder what she did wrong, if she wasn't good enough, if she was the problem. But not anymore. Now she sits in peace, knowing that the ones who are meant to be in her life will never make her question her worth. She no longer needs 100 friends. She needs one, and that one is herself. She used to feel uncomfortable being alone, used to feel like something was missing when she had no one to talk to. But then she realized, why did she feel alone when she had herself? Why did she need someone else's presence to feel complete? She started talking to herself with kindness, supporting herself the way she once wished others would. And the moment she stopped abandoning herself, she never felt alone again. Look at the strongest women in history, the most powerful forces in the world. Do you think they had a crowd cheering for them at every step? No. They had nights of solitude, moments of doubt, days when they were their only source of motivation. They learned to be their own best friend, their own biggest supporter, their own home. That's what makes them unshakable. She remembers the girl she used to be, the girl who needed someone to always be there, who feared silence, who felt empty without constant attention. That girl is gone. Now she sits in her own presence and feels at peace. She has become the person she once searched for in others. She has become the friend she always needed. She no longer waits for someone to ask how her day was. She checks in on herself. She no longer waits for someone to encourage her. She lifts herself up. She no longer looks for happiness in others. She creates it within herself. Because the truth is, the most dangerous, the most powerful, the most magnetic woman in the world is the one who is whole on her own. She has learned to laugh alone, to celebrate herself, to comfort herself in moments of pain. She no longer fears eating alone at a restaurant, no longer feels awkward walking into a room without a +1, no longer feels the need to constantly surround herself with people, because she has built a relationship with herself that no one can break. She used to think being alone meant being unwanted. Now she knows that being alone means being in the best company. She used to crave deep conversations with others. Now she has them with herself. She used to wait for someone to come and make her life feel exciting. Now she makes it exciting on her own. She has turned solitude into strength, loneliness into self-love, quiet moments into a source of power. She has become her own protector, her own guide, her own best friend. And because of that, she is no longer afraid of losing people. She knows that as long as she has herself, she has everything she needs. She moves differently. She doesn't wait for approval, doesn't seek permission, doesn't ask, is this okay, before making a move. She doesn't need validation because she has already given it to herself. She doesn't wait for someone to hold a hand through life. She holds her own. She is unapologetically independent. There was a time when she thought she needed someone to guide her, someone to reassure her, someone to make her feel safe. Society told her that a woman must always have someone, a friend to lean on, a partner to rely on, a family to protect her. But she learned the hard way that depending on others is dangerous. People leave, promises break, plans change. And when she had no one, she realized she had herself. She wakes up every morning and builds her life with her own 2 hands. No one pays her bills, no one funds her dreams. No one carries her burdens. She walks through fire and comes out stronger every time. She doesn't wait for a knight in shining armor, she sharpens her own sword. She doesn't wait for a helping hand, she becomes her own savior. She is both the queen and the warrior, both the storm and the calm. She remembers the days when she second-guessed herself, when she hesitated before speaking up, when she let others decide what was best for her. But those days are gone. Now, she makes decisions with confidence, speaks with certainty, and walks like she owns every room she enters. She doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. She takes up space. She doesn't ask for a seat at the table, she builds her own. Look at the world around her. She sees women conditioned to depend on others, waiting for a text back, waiting for someone to say, I'll take care of it. Waiting for someone to make them feel whole. But she refuses to wait. She goes out and takes what she wants. If she wants success, she builds it. If she wants love, she gives it to herself first. If she wants happiness, she creates it. People used to call her difficult, intimidating, too much. But she is not too much. She is exactly enough. She doesn't apologize for her ambition. She doesn't tone down her passion. She doesn't make herself smaller to fit into someone else's comfort zone. She walks with power, with confidence, with an energy that demands respect. She doesn't beg for attention. She commands it. She has seen too many women lose themselves in relationships, sacrifice their dreams for someone else's comfort, give up their independence to fit into a role they never wanted, but she refuses. She is not here to be someone's shadow. She is the light. She is not here to play small. She was born to be big. When she goes out to eat, she doesn't feel awkward sitting alone. She enjoys her own company. When she travels, she doesn't wait for a companion. She books the ticket and goes. When she wants something, she doesn't wait for someone to gift it to her. She works and buys it herself. She moves through life like a force. Unstoppable. Untouchable. There was a time when people told her, you need to be softer, more dependent, more agreeable. But why should she be anything less than what she is? She doesn't need to be softer for people who can't handle her strength. She doesn't need to depend on others when she is fully capable. She doesn't need to be agreeable when she has a mind of her own. She will not make herself small to fit into a world that fears powerful women. She is independent, not because she wants to prove something, but because she has no other choice. Life has tested her, pushed her, tried to break her, but every time she stood tall. She learned to fix things herself, to find solutions without help, to trust her own instincts. She became her own hero, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. And now she wouldn't trade it for anything. Some call her cold, but she is not cold. She is selective. She is not heartless. She just values herself too much to tolerate less than she deserves. She does not chase, does not beg, does not cling. She does not rely on empty words or broken promises. If someone leaves, she lets them. If someone doubts her, she proves them wrong by succeeding. She doesn't seek approval, doesn't need reassurance, doesn't wait for someone to tell her she is enough. She already knows. She doesn't need to be rescued, doesn't need to be saved. She is not waiting for a man to complete her, for a friend to validate her, for society to tell her she is doing it right. She is complete on her own. She doesn't apologize for her strength, doesn't explain why she chooses herself every time. She has fought too hard for this life to let anyone tell her how to live it. She has worked too hard to depend on someone else. She has built too much to let anyone take it away. She is a woman who stands alone, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. She is a woman who doesn't flinch in the face of difficulty, who doesn't fear walking alone, who doesn't hesitate to chase her dreams. She is independent, unstoppable, and unapologetically herself. She moves with grace, confidence, and a quiet power that turns heads wherever she goes. She doesn't chase attention, it naturally gravitates toward her. She doesn't beg for love, love finds her. She doesn't run after opportunities, she creates an aura so magnetic that opportunities chase her. This is the power of a woman who knows her worth. She attracts, she doesn't chase. There was a time when she thought she had to prove her value, that she had to show people why she was worthy of love, respect, and attention. She used to overextend herself, trying to keep friendships alive that were already dead, trying to impress people who didn't even see her, trying to make someone love her who was never meant to stay. But that version of her no longer exists. Now she walks into a room and her presence is felt before she even speaks. She has mastered the art of being so completely herself that she doesn't need to convince anyone to stay. She understands that when you have to chase something, it's already running away. The right people, the right opportunities, and the right love will never require her to beg. Look at the most powerful people in the world. Do they chase? No. They stand firm in who they are, and the world moves around them. She has learned that her energy is her greatest currency. When she operates from desperation, she repels. When she moves from self-assurance, she attracts. She remembers a time when she would send the extra text, make the extra effort, try to make things work even when they were clearly falling apart. She thought persistence meant love, that effort meant value, but she learned that what's meant for her will never require her to lose herself in the process. Now, she lets things flow. If someone wants to be in her life, they will be. If an opportunity is for her, it will come. If a love is meant to stay, it will. She no longer forces, no longer convinces, no longer overcompensates. She understands that the best things in life are drawn to certainty, not desperation. She sees it everywhere. Women who chase people who don't care, chase friendships that drain them, chase jobs that don't appreciate them. But she refuses to play that game. She knows that by standing in her own power, she will attract everything that aligns with her. She walks with an energy that says, I know who I am. And that energy is intoxicating. People are drawn to confidence, to self-respect, to a woman who doesn't need external validation to feel whole. She doesn't need to prove her worth. She simply is. Look at the ocean. It doesn't run after the shore, but the waves always return. Look at the sun. It doesn't chase the planets, yet everything orbits around it. This is her energy. She doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't plead. She lets things align with her naturally. There was a time when she thought effort meant value, but now she knows better. Effort should be mutual, energy should be reciprocated, love should flow both ways. If she has to run after something, it's not for her. If she has to force something, it's not meant to be. She knows her worth, and because of that, she doesn't settle. She doesn't lower her standards just to keep someone around. She doesn't accept breadcrumbs when she deserves the whole feast. She doesn't cling to what is leaving. She lets go with grace. And in return, life rewards her. The right people show up. The right opportunities find her. The right love stays. She has become a magnet for everything she deserves, not because she chases, but because she attracts. She understands something most people fear. Solitude is not loneliness. It is power. It is clarity. It is the foundation on which true strength is built. She has walked through silence and found herself there. She has embraced being alone, not as something to be pitied, but as a gift that has sharpened her mind, strengthened her heart, and made her untouchable. There was a time when she feared the quiet, a time when she surrounded herself with noise, meaningless conversations, shallow friendships, relationships that barely scratched the surface, just to avoid being alone. She mistook busyness for fulfillment, thinking that a life full of people meant a life full of meaning. But she learned that solitude does not diminish her. It amplifies her. She started spending time alone, and that's when everything changed. She sat with her thoughts and realized how much of her life had been dictated by the expectations of others. She saw how often she had silenced her own voice to fit in, how she had ignored her instincts to please people who didn't even value her. And in that solitude, she made a decision. She would never betray herself again just to be accepted. She realized that the world teaches people to fear being alone because solitude forces you to face yourself. It makes you confront your weaknesses, your wounds, your insecurities. But she also realized something else. Solitude is where true transformation happens. It is in the silence that you hear your own voice the loudest. It is in the stillness that you understand your worth. Look at history. Every great leader, every visionary, every person who changed the world spent time in solitude. They didn't fear being alone because they knew that solitude breeds wisdom. She has mastered this. She takes herself on dates, enjoys her own company, and doesn't need constant validation from others to feel important. She doesn't fear the quiet, she welcomes it. She sees people around her running from silence, jumping from relationship to relationship, drowning themselves in social media, surrounding themselves with people who drain them, all because they can't bear to be alone with their own thoughts. But she is different. She thrives in solitude because she knows that it sharpens her focus and makes her powerful beyond measure. She doesn't need a crowded room to feel valuable. She doesn't need 100 friends to feel loved. She doesn't need constant attention to feel worthy. She has built a world within herself so strong, so complete, that she is never truly alone. Because solitude has given her something that external validation never could. Self-respect. She understands that a woman who is comfortable in her own presence is unstoppable. She is not desperate for company, not afraid of sitting alone, not in a rush to fill empty spaces with meaningless distractions. She is selective with her energy, intentional with her time, and careful about who she lets into her world. She has discovered that when she embraces solitude, she is in full control of her emotions. She is not easily influenced, not swayed by opinions, not dependent on anyone to define her happiness. She stands firm in who she is, and that is a power that intimidates those who do not know themselves. People wonder how she is so confident, so calm, so unshaken by the chaos around her. The secret is simple. She has spent enough time in solitude to know that she is whole on her own. She doesn't need external validation to feel complete. She doesn't fear losing people because she has already found herself. And when a woman finds herself, she is truly free. She walks into a room and the energy shifts. Not because she demands attention, but because she owns herself in a way that makes people take notice. She is not weak, she is not fragile, and she is certainly not someone to be pitied. She is feared. Not because she is cruel or cold, but because she is a force. And people don't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need saving. There was a time when people looked at her and thought, poor girl, she's alone. They assumed she was missing something, that her solitude was a sign of sadness, that her independence was a mask for loneliness. But they couldn't have been more wrong, because while they spent their lives seeking approval, she built herself into someone who no longer required it. She became her own home, her own strength, her own protector. She has met people who tried to belittle her, who mistook her kindness for weakness, who assumed she could be manipulated, controlled, or broken. And every single one of them learned the hard way. She is not someone to be played with. She doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't entertain nonsense. She cuts off negativity without hesitation. And that alone makes people fear her. Because in a world where so many tolerate mistreatment just to be liked, she is different. She refuses to be anyone's victim. She has seen it happen to other women, those who give too much, who compromise their worth, who shrink themselves down just to make others comfortable. She has watched them apologize for being too strong, too opinionated, too ambitious, but she refuses to do the same. If her strength intimidates people, so be it. If her confidence makes others uncomfortable, that is their problem to deal with, not hers. People fear what they cannot control, and that is why she is feared, because she cannot be manipulated with sweet words or empty promises. She sees through deception, recognizes fake smiles, and knows when someone is trying to take advantage of her. She has been burned before, and from those flames, she built her own fire. Now, she is untouchable. She doesn't waste time proving herself. She doesn't explain her choices to those who will never understand. She moves differently, speaks with intention, and carries herself with an energy that commands respect. And because of this, people either admire her or fear her, but no one pities her. She has turned pain into power, solitude into strength, and every setback into a comeback. She has learned that being feared is not about striking fear into others. It is about being so self-sufficient, so secure, so completely in control of her own life that no one dares to undermine her. It is about making people realize that she does not need them. She chooses who gets access to her. People used to say you should be softer, more accommodating, more agreeable. But she knows the truth. The world does not reward those who shrink themselves. It rewards those who stand tall, who demand respect, who refuse to be walked over. She doesn't have time for people who feel threatened by her confidence. She has no patience for those who try to dim her light to make themselves feel brighter. She doesn't entertain those who mistake her silence for submission. She is feared because she is free. Free from the need for approval, free from the fear of rejection, free from the idea that she must fit into a mold to be accepted. She has spent years becoming this version of herself, and she will not apologize for it. She will not shrink. She will not pretend to be less. She will not let anyone mistake her independence for loneliness or her strength for coldness. They may fear her. They may misunderstand her, but they will never pity her, because she is not a woman who needs saving. She is a woman who saves herself. She does not ask for permission to exist. She does not wait for the world to tell her she is enough. She walks with a certainty that shakes the ground beneath her feet, because she knows, deep in her bones, that she was not born to live within walls built by someone else's fears. She does not shrink. She does not conform, and she does not accept limitations placed upon her by those who never dared to break their own. She lives without limits. From the time she was young, they told her what she could and couldn't do. Sit properly, speak softly, be agreeable. Don't aim too high, don't be too ambitious, too loud, too confident. But she refused. She refused to be caged by expectations that had nothing to do with her potential and everything to do with their insecurities. She realized early on that people fear women who are unstoppable, so they try to break them before they even begin. But she would not be broken. She has seen women hold back because they were afraid of what others might say. She has watched them make themselves smaller, dim their own light, just to make sure they fit in. But she never understood the point of living a half-life, of waiting for someone else to approve of her dreams. She chose differently. She chose to live fully, to reach beyond what was expected of her, to step into spaces where people thought she didn't belong and claim them as her own. The world often tells women, stay in your lane, but she creates her own lane. She carves her own path. She does not settle for good enough when she knows she is capable of greatness. She does not wait for an invitation to take up space. She takes it unapologetically. They told her, you can't do this alone. And yet she did. They told her, it's not possible. And yet she made it happen. They told her, you should slow down, take it easy, be more careful. But she knows that playing it safe has never led to anything extraordinary. She was not put on this earth to tiptoe through life. She was meant to run, to fly, to go beyond the limits that others accept so willingly. She has failed before, and she will fail again. But failure does not scare her. It fuels her. Every setback, every challenge, every no she has ever heard has only made her stronger, sharper, more determined. She understands that the only true failure is never trying at all. There are people who will look at her and wonder, how does she do it? They will assume she has some secret advantage, some hidden luck. But the truth is simple. She refuses to be limited. She refuses to let fear make her decisions. She refuses to live a life that is anything less than extraordinary. She has stood in rooms where she was the only woman, the only outsider, the only one who dared to dream bigger than the rest. And instead of feeling intimidated, she felt powerful because she knew that nothing was off limits to her. She has taken risks that scared her, walked away from comfort, bet on herself when no one else did. And every time she has proven that the only limits that exist are the ones we accept. They told her she would regret being so bold, so independent, so relentless. But she doesn't regret a thing because she is free. Free to explore, free to change, free to grow, free to become whoever she chooses to be. She lives without limits because she understands that life is not meant to be played small. She refuses to look back with regret, knowing she let fear hold her hostage. She refuses to be one of those people who spend their whole lives waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect circumstances. She creates her own opportunities. She builds her own destiny. She does not let society's expectations define her. She does not let other people's fears become her own. She does not let doubt whisper in her ear and convince her to play small. She knows that to truly live is to take risks, to embrace the unknown, to step into the wild and claim it as her own. She was never meant to stay in a box, never meant to play by someone else's rules, never meant to live on anyone's terms but her own. She does not just exist, she lives, fully, fearlessly, without apology, without hesitation, without limits. She stands alone, yet she is never lonely. She walks a path few dare to take, yet she never looks back. She is not waiting for permission, for approval, for someone to tell her she is worthy. She was born worthy. She was born limitless. And now, she moves with a fire in her soul that no one can extinguish. They told her she was too much, too bold, too ambitious, too independent. But she was never too much. They were simply too little to handle her. She has learned that strength isn't about shouting, proving, or seeking validation. Strength is about knowing who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing that you don't need to chase, beg, or plead to be seen, heard, or loved. She radiates a quiet confidence, a presence so unshakable that people have no choice but to notice. The world often tells women to be careful with your dreams. Don't dream too big. Be careful with your confidence, don't intimidate others. Be careful with your independence, don't make people uncomfortable. But she refuses to shrink for the comfort of those who were never meant to stand beside her in the first place. She does not ask the world for space, she creates it. She does not wait for opportunity, she builds it. She does not break herself into smaller pieces so others can feel whole. She does not adjust her crown for those who are blind to its brilliance. She walks into every room like she belongs there, because she does. She carries herself with the knowledge that the only permission she ever needed was her own. The only validation that truly matters is the one that comes from within. They wonder how she does it, how she remains so steady, so unshaken, so completely at peace with who she is. The answer is simple. She no longer looks outside for things that were always meant to be found within. She does not need a crowd to feel complete. She does not need a man to define her worth. She does not need constant reassurance to know that she is enough. She is enough in her silence. She is enough in her solitude. She is enough in the quiet moments when the world is not watching. She has become the kind of woman who no longer waits. She does not wait for happiness, she creates it. She does not wait for someone to rescue her, she rescues herself. She does not wait for love, she becomes love. She is no longer just surviving, she is living. Not just thriving, but thriving. Not just thriving, but conquering. She is unstoppable, untouchable, and unapologetic. And if the world cannot handle her, that is not her burden to carry. She was never meant to be ordinary. She was always meant to be extraordinary.